All right, Doug, we're back with questions from members of the file. Starting off with the war in Ukraine. The question is, the French president has recently been barking that European countries should send soldiers to Ukraine, while Russians are claiming that they have evidence 2,000 French soldiers will be sent soon. What are the implications of a full Russian versus NATO war in Europe? Could it conceivably remain a conventional war without escalation to nuclear?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer, from my point of view, is yeah, I think it can, because both sides would be so leery about letting off a nuclear weapon that it's like I think it's like in a bar room uh, when a fight starts. It's one thing where they're just hitting each other with their fists, and something else where they draw knives. And so these people that run these governments are crazy, especially the European governments, because I see Putin as whatever his faults, and he's got plenty. Oh, he's rational, he's thoughtful, he's a chess player, and recognizes, as he's said many times, that nuclear weapons are a very bad idea. So the Russians won't start a nuclear war, but God, these degraded beings that run these Western quote unquote democracies, it's crazy the way they're provoking and provoking. And Macron, I'm a big fan of poodles, but he's like a yappy little poodle facing a giant Russian bear. He's insane.
He is insane. And it's not just him though. We talked about it before. There was a real tone change that started maybe at the beginning of this year, and then all of a sudden we're talking up the Russian threat and that it could escalate, and the UK needed to bolster its military, and it wasn't just UK, all across Europe. But then with Macron, it kicked off this new talk of escalation, an acknowledgement that there have been foreign mercenaries operating, and not just mercenaries, but people who are foreign troops that have been operating already in Ukraine. And you see just the rhetoric that's out there, but then also the specific actions. Like I sent you a link where they showed a bunch of Abrams tanks, US Abrams tanks that are owned by the US, not given to Ukraine, showing up in Greece, and being offloaded there with en route, I guess, to Romania. I'm not really sure where in NATO they're going to put them, but it just seems like there's no sane or no adult in the room, I guess, as the Bidenistas said before he came in. There's no adults in the room here, no sanity to this whole thing. And it's just, it really is crazy to me that it's gotten this far.
It really is insane and unnecessary, and it can spin totally out of control. There's nothing we can do about it except not be anywhere near where it could happen. And as far as mercenaries joining NATO, with the nature of this war, it's not the type of thing that a smart mercenary would get involved in. There's no opportunity for profit or getting the mineral rights after you win or any of this type of thing. But there's a high prospect of being hunted by a drone. No matter how technically competent you are, being a mercenary, good chance you're just dead meat. So, no, it makes no sense. None of it.
I saw the statistic today. I think it was from the Substack. Is it Simplicus, the thinker?
Yes. Simplicius, the thinker. Yeah.
He's always got really good stuff. A huge data dump essentially in every update from him. And there was some
The only problem with his stuff is it's good, but it's way too long. I don't have all day to read all that stuff from it.
Yeah, it'd be good if he inserted some subheadlines that break it up better a little more, so you could just get the meat of it. But one thing he said is they had this drone expert from Ukraine, somebody who's in the Ukrainian government, say that by at some point later this year, the Russia will have enough FPV drones to hunt every individual member of the Ukrainian military. Like, that's a terrifying prospect when you see these things targeting and going after an individual like that. Holy crap.
Oh, and it's gonna get better or get worse as it is with bumblebee-sized drones, and that stuff is all on the way. So
Yeah,
forget
and
about
autonomous.
it. Yeah,
As soon as they start making them autonomous in some way, where they're looking for signature profiles or something on people to know who the enemy is, patterns in uniforms, I don't know, the armbands they wear.
yeah, right. Yeah, forgot about it. Anyway, I don't know how this thing is going to end because the depends on who you listen to. The West wants to say the Russians are basically using stupid human wave assaults and taking gigantic casualties, and other uh, people that are look at it on our Westerners that look at it from the Russian side say no, the Ukrainians are being turned into hamburger. So
It's hard to know what the truth is, but it does. There are a lot of reports that, that from certain towns in Ukraine where they're saying there aren't any men left. They've all been corralled and taken and forced to the front lines. So,
yeah, it's like this one report of like a reinforced platoon was moving into this village to rotate the platoon that was there, and they were all dead. So intelligently, they decided to surrender to the Russians immediately, saying that the last group of guys were all dead. And what the report said was uh, part of the terms of them giving themselves up was that they wouldn't be traded back to the Ukrainians because they they, they want to stay in jail in Russia as opposed to go back to the Ukraine because they know they'd be severely punished.
wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. All right.
Plus,
So,
because the first casualty in war is the truth. So you really can't believe anything.
yeah, can't believe anything. But no matter what, it's a disaster for a generation of young men, maybe just in Ukraine, but it could easily expand way beyond Ukraine if they're not careful.
Yeah, that's right. And Western Europe is going to be absolutely inundated with uh, a wave of Ukrainian women who make their living on their backs because they're destitute. So the whole thing is a disaster. And people in the Biden regime and Macron and the Germans and the Tusk regime in Poland, they all ought to be prosecuted as war criminals. Well, they should all be hung, quite frankly. It's criminal.
Yeah, this is a case that Kunstler makes, Jim Kunstler, in his blog that came out today. He says basically there are two groups. There's the sane and the insane now, and that's it. It's not right or left or anything. It's just sane or insane. And he talks about the leadership in all of these Western countries and that they're clearly, it's to the sane, they're clearly acting to the detriment of their populations on the whole. And it's so obvious to everybody who's sane. I guess they probably think we're insane, but that, they really should be tried. It's unbelievable. I mean, I can't even find these gray areas where they're doing good by their citizens.
Yeah. And of course, it's all compounded by what's going on in Gaza as well.
Yeah, I showed you earlier. I'm not going to show it now, but videos that are circulating of these drone attacks on these individual men that are just walking down the road all alone, and then this one group of four. And it's worse than what Julian Assange was, what they really went after him for when he released the video of the Apache helicopter blowing up some civilians in Iraq. It's way worse than that, and it's all over the internet. So, yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. Well, the Israelis, you'd think they'd be better than they are at PR because they're really not making any friends for themselves.
No, definitely tide has turned against them. Uh,
Yeah.
all right. So, but a way to resolve that is through censorship. And we talked earlier about the TikTok bill that's going through Congress. So the question is, given the broad reach of interpretations from the TikTok bill, is it not just a matter of time before YouTube channels, Facebook, and even perhaps Substacks could be corralled or censored as well?
No question about that, actually, because the philosophical attitude of these people control Washington, D.C., and for that matter, most government entities across the U.S. They're anti-libertarian, frankly. So, yeah, the fact that has this bill passed the House at this point? We're waiting for we're waiting for the Senate to pass it. How is that what we're doing? And of course,
Correct.
we'll robotically sign it. So, yeah, it'll be one thing after another. It doesn't look good at all as far as freedom of speech or any of the uh, who is that who is that stupid Supreme Court member, Ketanji Johnson, the one that doesn't know what a woman is. Okay. And she said that uh, the First Amendment ought to be reined in because it's limiting what our government can do. How stupid is that? That's the whole point of the thing.
I
Why it's
know.
there.
Literally, the Bill of Rights are that's what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. See, you've got her and Sotomayor, who doesn't understand anything but just relies on the fact that she's a wise Latina woman. Uh, God forbid that somebody dies on the Supreme Court and Biden replaces them with more people like that, or he decides to pack the Supreme Court, which is, well, we'll see what happens with this coming election, which it doesn't matter who wins. It's going to be a, a veritable civil war, uh, whether Trumpites win or the Democrats win. The other side's going to go batshit crazy, I think.
Yeah, I'm just reminded of the Kunstler's article. I'll link to it in the description of the video. I encourage everyone to read it. It's awesome. It's always good, but it's especially good this time. And he said something like at the end, he said, I'm gonna say what other people would say if they weren't afraid of being lawfare themselves, and that is that it sure looks like the people of color are going after the people of non-color. And that was in reference to the Supreme Court. The people in the Supreme Court, all the people prosecuting Trump as well, are of at least two black women that are leading those charges, and one of them has been utterly discredited in court for hiring a boyfriend to do it, but still is
Yeah,
allowed to stay on the case.
exactly. Still a prosecutor. Yeah. And it's funny looking at this from a global point of view. There's about 8 billion people in the world. And, well, there's probably only about, at most, a billion white people. So actually, this whole thing about minorities on a global scale, white people are a minority. And we're being treated like that now. It's, we're envy, which is the most vicious of all all of the vices, is at large uh, throughout the Western world. So it's serious.
Hmm, okay. Well, let's see. Next question is, Doug, were you ever a day trader?
God, no. Uh, it's a very rare bird that can make any money or succeed as a day trader. Um, no. Uh, Look, just look at the mathematics of it. Uh, Here you are sitting at home on your computer trying to second guess what the markets are doing. And there are guys that are on the virtual floor that have every advantage, that know everything about these markets as much as a person can. and their computers, their algorithms know much more than they do. They have instant executions. Look, in addition to that, you've got the bid-ask spread on everything. You've got commissions of some type or another on everything. Now, it's insane. I remember when I was playing polo, one of the pros I was working with, Red, I won't mention his last name, he decided that since he heard these rumors about people making so much money in internet stocks, he rented an office and he had a wall of computers and he subscribed to all these ridiculously expensive newsletters. And he just blew himself up. And you couldn't talk to him about it. So, no, the whole idea of being a day trader for every reason possible is insane and ridiculous.
Hmm.
Don't do it.
Yeah, you have to have some advantage, and I think the advantage you can play off of, if any, or and you know way more about this than I do, is just that sometimes the enthusiasm of the market gets out of control, and sometimes some things are loved or hated, and it's like taking advantage of that as it moves through the psychological spectrum is where you can succeed, right? And
Yeah,
that happens over like years or months or certainly not minutes.
exactly. It's, it's like, it's the worst kind of gambling, basically, is what it is. Uh, yeah. Look, did Warren Buffett or Peter Lynch or did they make their money day trading? The answer is just the opposite. Absolutely not.
All right. Has the Fed lost control of the economy? Why would their dot plots show three rate cuts in 2024 when stocks, gold, and Bitcoin are all making new all time highs? Why are they pivoting to a dovish tone right now? Or are they just bluffing?
Yeah. Listen, I think it's a big mistake even watching the Fed. They don't know what they're doing. See what's happening with interest rates and the Fed. It's like an elevator with a lunatic at the controls going up and down for what appear to be random reasons. And the economic theories that they base their actions on are all bullshit. No, in any event, there's so much debt in the world, and they've done so much to build the debt from the fractional reserve system with the commercial banks, which itself guarantees a catastrophic disaster at some point, to the fact that they're really the only buyer of federal government debt. No, don't waste your time listening to these people or watching what they do. Uh, there are other places to devote your attention to that will be much more productive.
Okay. Um, Next question. Says Doug has always remained in good physical shape throughout the years. Does he subscribe to a particular diet and exercise regime? What has worked for him and what doesn't work for him?
Well, look, it's tough because, frankly, once you get out of your 20s or certainly your 30s, the second law of thermodynamics becomes increasingly evident. Everything winds down and it gets harder and harder to stay into shape. So I try. Uh, and throughout my life, I've always liked to get exercise, which has helped. So what have I done to stay in shape over my life? I was never a marathon runner because it was painful and boring, but like martial arts. And I did that for many years, both boxing and taekwondo. And when I was in Hong Kong, we took kung fu for a couple of years and uh, tai chi uh, and yoga and all that stuff. I've done all that stuff. But actually, in addition to all that, and it's very underrated, is going to the gym and lifting weights, quite frankly. that's a habit that you should get into early and stick with it. And I have, even though as you get older, frankly, you lose energy and you'd just rather not get up from your chair and go and pump iron for an hour because it's hard. I try to force myself to do it. Um, in other words, otherwise, stay away from desserts and don't pig out on regular food and just common sense stuff. I know Ozempic and Wegovy, well, whatever the new drugs are that I guess it's Novo Nordisk, a new breakthrough. Well, in the past, it used to be fan, and I don't like to get involved in these things that look great to start with, but may turn out to be fads with all kinds of contraindications and side effects. So I don't know if I'm answering the question. What do you think, Matt? Because you stay in good shape too.
Yeah, well, I'm in better shape now than I was 6 months ago, I think, and a year ago, but I think definitely I like lifting weights, and I think you just gotta move. I saw this interview with Clint Eastwood maybe a decade ago, and he's like, "Every day do something physical." And he's in his 90s now, and he still I think he's in his 90s, does a movie
Yeah.
every couple of years still. And, he's just like, you have to move. You have to do something physical every single day. And I think, if you build that as a life habit, I think it makes it all a lot easier. And then when you're doing that, it makes you less likely to indulge in the stuff that is bad for you. Everyone knows what the bad stuff is. It's sugar, it's alcohol, it's
uh,
potato chips. We all know. So it's having but if you have good habits, it keeps you from indulging in those things, I think.
Yeah, it's just common sense and self discipline.
I also think fasting occasionally is really useful, personally.
Yes, you're quite correct. Or
Yeah.
if you don't want to fast consistently, um, one thing that our friend Mark Ford is promoting that found works is just having one meal a day, but eating whatever he wants during the 1 hour that he has his meal. Okay, that, that works. And others say, well, all of your eating should be within 1 8 hour period where you're not.
Yeah, intermittent fasting, basically.
Yeah, that's right. We have basically a 16-hour fast every day. There's many paths up the mountain. So
Yeah.
it boils down to common sense, which is uncommon, and self discipline, which is even less common.
Okay, what's your take on I don't know if I'll say it right, Dojo Argentino, the
Dogo,
dog?
Argentino, yes. That is a mighty dog and a huge dog. 90 pounds, we're talking average Dogo Argentino, I think. They're a battle dog, a great household defense dog. So maybe when society starts breaking down, I should get myself a Dogo. But I'm a poodle fancier, and I'm fine with a king poodle.
Well, your king poodles are terrifying, so I think that I don't know if I'd be more afraid of
Well,
Oscar or someone else.
and nobody expects that a poodle would be a battle dog, but they, I'm not talking about the yappy little ones, I'm talking the big ones. And they were bred to hunt the deadly otter in Northern Europe. That's what they did. And they became the dog of royalty because after a busy day of hunting otter with the Duke, uh, then you feast, and it's very convenient having a big poodle with soft wool to wipe your hands on, as opposed to a wolfhound, which you wipe your hands on, having your come up with hair all over them. So, and of course, poodles don't they don't smell the way most dogs do, and they don't drool. which Dogos do. So Dogos aren't good bed dogs, but you can go from hunting honor to feasting to letting your poodle jump into the bed with you. They're very flexible dogs. So
Have you
it's
seen
just
one of
not
these Dogos
desperate.
in person?
No, they're a rare dog.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
mean, I've looked into Dogos, and maybe if society starts breaking down, I'll feel it's prudent to get one to supplement my complement to poodles.
yeah. It says it's a Mastiff type and pack hunting dog bred for the pursuit of big game such as wild boar and puma.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
I'd never even heard of it. Interesting.
yeah, yeah. They're one of these battle dogs.
Yeah, my dogs are not bad. They not at all. Let's see. This question here is uh what events in Doug's career caused his capital to grow especially fast?
Some would say I lack prudence, frankly. I don't take risks now the way I used to. I've told the story before, I think here on the channel, but maybe that was a long time ago. It's what were my three biggest hits during one great bull market 20 years ago, 25, I don't know what it was. I described them as being a fraud, accident, and a psychotic break. And what might that have been? The fraud was the great Rex scandal, where stock went to 100 to 1, and I got in early, and it was a fraud, pure fraud. But none of us knew it. It looked good. So it was a question of buying cheap and selling when it got frothy. Whether it was a fraud or not, we didn't know, but I got out. And the accident, that was Diamond Fields, because uh, I got into that in a private placement at a quarter with a full warrant, and I bought more at $4 with the full warrant. Why? Because it's called Diamond Fields, was called Diamond Fields, because it looked like offshore diamonds, offshore Namibia. Uh, the diamonds would come from the cratons below, and rivers would do the mining for them, taking them down to the sea and break up the crappy diamonds, and only the best diamonds would survive. And they'd all be concentrated at the mouth of the river off of Namibia. It was a great story, and they were getting initial results that were great. So that stock went to like, I don't know what Diamond Fields went to, $150, $200, something like that. But that worked out really well. But it was an accident because it turned out that offshore diamonds um, weren't economic after all for various reasons. So why did Diamond Fields go to 200 or whatever the hell it did? Because some geologists that were working for Diamond Fields also had a property in Labrador. And this was true. It was the last helicopter ride back from the fields. And they looked at a hill that they hadn't paid attention to. And they said, see that the color that I'm seeing, land of the helicopter, blah, blah, blah. Later, it turns into the gigantic nickel discovery of what the hell was that nickel discovery called in Labrador from time? Anyway, that's what took the stock up. So my first thing, like I said, was a fraud. Second thing was an accident. And the third was a psychotic break, because there was a broker in Chicago that I knew. And he got it in his head that he liked this one stock. And he, I think he went crazy. He put all of his clients with great enthusiasm and large amounts of money into this one company, which still exists today, incidentally. And I had a couple of private placements in the thing, and he took it from under $1 to over 20. So that was not as sweet as the other two, but it was pretty sweet. So anyway, 3 huge hits, one after another. It
Wow.
I it made my day, let me tell you.
Wow. Was it Voices Bay?
Oises Bay, exactly. That's right.
That was Diamond Field's nickel discovery.
Yeah. So maybe, just maybe, we'll have another bull market in metals. I think we will, because the mining stocks now are just really cheap. Nobody cares about them. Nobody wants to buy them. Forget about them, care about them, because mining companies are notoriously anti ESG and DIE and all this type of thing, and they rape Mother Earth, and everybody hates mining stocks. But if you want the lights to turn on when you flip the switch, you actually need stuff like copper and nickel. And with the dollar being destroyed, it's nice to have a bunch of gold and silver. So, yeah, I think we're going to have at least one more bull market in these mining stocks. So
Hmm.
that'll be a great swan song to sing.
Okay.
And then I'm going to swear off the damn things, because no intelligent investor gets involved in mining stocks. Warren Buffett is 100% correct in never having owned a mining stock. There's,
What he did buy one of the big ones for a while recently.
well, perhaps he did. I think I remember hearing about that, right? Because he just couldn't pass up the value. Which the hell was it he bought? Because even though it's the crappiest business in the world, he just couldn't.
Might have been Newmont.
Might have been. And Newmont's incidentally very cheap right now, but I hate these big mining companies because inevitably a company gets big, it's run by suits, not by the kind of people that are entrepreneurs and founders. And the suits aren't geologists, they're not mining engineers, they're bean counters. So, but I'm going to swear the things off and buy Prudent stocks after the bull market. Should the bull market appear, I think it will. Famous last words. We'll find out.
It does seem like it's started to turn with gold breaking out to new highs over 2,200, and then they've started even like the indexes like JDX and GDX and GDXJ, like they've started to turn.
Yeah, they may be waking up finally. Well, hoping against hope. Yes,
Yeah, I know. This is it.
that's my
This is the
story,
first
and
time.
I'm sticking to it. But I can't wait to dump all this crap and buy real productive assets. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Right. Doug says it's important to surround yourself with successful people. When was the last time Doug was inspired by a successful person to do something that had a big impact on his life?
Yeah. Well, I remember the first one, but uh, my rule of thumb is stay away from bad and crazy people.
How do
I
you know
mean,
if they're bad?
it takes a while to find out because sometimes, or often, the bad people are cleverly disguised.
Yeah. And when you mean bad, though, do you mean morally bad or from a skill standpoint, a competency?
Well, both. But the most important thing, of course, is moral badness. In other words, they lack Boy Scout virtues, which incidentally I can still name from memory: trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean. And I've always had a problem with reverent because it has religious connotations. But yes, there are some things that you should
Do,
revere.
do,
So
you don't like reverent more than you don't like obedient?
I always had a problem with that one too. Yeah, I agree. And I've always had problems with the three cardinal virtues: faith, hope, and charity. I don't think any of them are virtues, quite frankly. And the seven deadly sins, I'm not so sure that they're deadly sins at all. We could analyze all these things where a lot of things are turned on their head. They're just the opposite, or at least different from what most people think they are. But what was the question?
Who well, you said last time somebody, uh, inspired you to do something that had a big impact on your
Uh,
life?
I would say nothing recently, because if you hang out with morally righteous, it's a funny word, but it's not a bad word, people that will do the right thing, and you don't have to watch your back as much. You don't always have to be on guard. Uh, and they can be just as fun and interesting as wild and crazy criminals who I've known quite a few of actually throughout my life. And it can be interesting, but don't invite Dracula into your house. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Who you started to say the first person who, so the specific question is, when was the last time Doug was inspired by a successful person to do something that had a big impact on his life? And you started to say the first person you remember.
Well, I must have mentioned him before, and I still remember his name. When I was in Switzerland in 1967, I got into a really bad auto accident. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks and barely survived and broke a whole bunch of bones and all kinds of stuff. And while I was in the hospital in Switzerland, in Bern, the Inselspital, um, uh, the guy in the room next door was his name was Ron Schneeberger. And it turned out that he was an ex French Foreign Legionnaire. And like most Legionnaires, frankly, it draws either criminals or rogue intellectuals or all kinds of things. Certainly, ever since Beaugest was written back in the 20s or whatever it was, but it's an organization that's just drawing all kinds of crazy people. So Ron and I would he'd come and visit me because I was in traction, and we'd play chess all day and talk. And the bee he had in his bonnet was with a bunch of his buddies from the Legion. They wanted to rob the National Bank of Haiti. And it seemed like a pretty good idea at the time. Papa Doc was running the place, a hardened criminal, and it was all stolen money and it was a chaotic, disorganized country. And so I said, well, sign me up. I was in no position to at that time, but it got me in terms of thinking big because, well, these are criminal thoughts, but it was a criminal enterprise Ron was proposing, essentially. And you rob the local candy store, and what are you going to get? A local liquor store. Maybe you'll get a few $100, and you'll definitely get caught, and you're going to do like 2 to 5 in the pen, and you can move up, and you can plan on a bank robbery, get a lot more money if it's well planned. Maybe you'll get away for a while. But robbing a national bank, I thought, oh, yeah, because who's going to pursue you? The Haitian government? No, that's oh, so. And in those days, it might have been possible because in those days, Haiti might have had a lot of money in the bank.
Mm.
It's possible. Papa Doc had a personal fortune. So anyway,
So he made you think bigger, but not
thinking
criminal.
thinking bigger and adventurously and having fun with a certain amount of danger while you're making money. So, but then as time goes on, you realize that it's not the best way to make money, and theft is never good.
All right.
Even stealing money from people that have stolen money. Well, you can rationalize that, but
You can rationalize it, definitely.
yeah, but that's not just treading those waters, frankly. They're shark infested.
Yeah, but I wonder if that, like, the seed of that idea, this was before International Man, right?
Yeah, it was when I was 20 years old.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how much of this seed of this idea, meeting this super adventurous, risk-taking guy who had these wild ideas, How much do you think that seed planted in you and helped form International Man?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then the non-criminal version of that is your hobby that you've been pitching for years, which is go into a country and reform it. Make a
Yeah.
lot of money that way, but reforming it.
That's right. It's related, where you basically take over a country and reform it, but you don't have to kill anybody
Of course, they steal their shit.
or steal their shit. Right.
Right.
That's
That
that's exactly right.
that actually goes. I this That's the next question here about on the list. It says, thinking about Doug's hobby of trying to convert a third world country into a publicly owned corporation, I'd be interested to hear his thoughts about who would control and or direct the corporation. Would it be elected officials? Would it be a board of directors? How would corruption and subversion be prevented? In essence, how would governance differ from so-called democratically elected governments?
Yeah. Well, I've had really wonderful adventures in at least 10 countries, third world countries, pitching that deal to the guy that runs it. Or, and I should write these things down before I forget them all, quite frankly, because some were really good adventures. But the problem that I had was that what is the governance of the corporation? Because the people that are in their phony baloney parliaments or congresses, whenever they have, uh, got to toss them a bone. And you don't want those people, if you're going to have a public corporation, in the board of directors. You want people that are upstanding and ethical and knowledgeable. And these local politicians never are. They're just used to stealing. So how do you get rid of them? That was always a stumbling block. So I was just trying to get over the first hurdle, which was getting the man on top to buy the idea.
Hmm.
And there were three things the plan offered him. Number one, it'll make you legitimately rich because you can't effectively steal money the way Mobutu and Marcos and all these guys, Mugabe, all these guys have in the past. So by giving all the shares pro rata to the people, but a certain percentage would be given to the people that make it happen, like the guy on top and the people he has to pay off, and me, for instance. Uh, that would solve the problem about they all want to be wealthy, and this legitimizes it. Oh, that's a good idea. Kind of like that. And second thing was doing something as radical and outstanding as giving all the government assets to the people pro rata, since they theoretically own the government assets anyway. But it's just in theory. This is making it real. Uh, that would that would put them on the front covers of every magazine in the world in a favorable light, and they all want to be famous as well as rich. Uh, and the third thing is, since he'd be giving assets to the people that they could spend at some point, or spend the dividends, hopefully, which would occur, the people would love him as opposed to hate him. So, yeah, that sounds pretty good too. So it was pretty easy to make the sale to the guy on top. The problem was the guys just underneath, who are always the ones that are doing the real stealing. They're boots on the ground thieves. They're the ones around him. And of course, if we made this happen, how are you going to get these guys to move aside so that you could have international people uh, of known sound moral character? How are you going to get them there to replace the criminals just under the president? Because they're not going to like it very much. So there were glitches with making it happen. This is why Augusto Pinochet in Chile might have been a great candidate for this if I'd been able to visit him, because he went whole hog for the free marketization of Chile, they had to kill a couple thousand people, which by third world standards is really not very many. But the reason everybody thinks of him as being a criminal is not because he killed a couple thousand people. This is nothing. I can give you dozens of examples. It's because he free marketized the country and turned it from a backwater, nothing nowhere mining province shithole, which Chile used to be, with beautiful weather and scenery, nonetheless, into the most prosperous country in Latin America. So he would have been ideal, actually, for this type of thing. Because if he distributed government assets to the people, that would have given the people an interest in maintaining these assets, as opposed to you're going to steal from yourself. Well, your neighbors won't like that if you start doing it. Anyway, it's a long story. And I hope somebody else picks up that ball and runs with it on some basis.
Yeah. You still have it's democratically controlled technically because you have the shareholders that can vote in the board of directors and all that.
That's right.
But at least at least they're voting on they're not voting on trying to get more from their fellow citizens. And that which is what they do through the government. They vote to get special privileges from the state because of their particular position or their behavior. Whereas with this, it's just direct ownership of the assets, presumably direct benefit of the distributions, the dividends of those, and no one wants to, and once the people had that, it'd be very difficult to wrest it away from them, I think.
I think so. You can't nationalize the national oil company if it's owned by the people and the people are getting dividends from the shares. No, anything can go wrong. Managements of all types are notorious for feather bedding and stealing from a company and all this type of thing. All kinds of problems you have to solve just in life. Okay, everywhere. Nothing peculiar to this plan. But,
But at least it's not fraud. Like the idea of the state, the government, is the idea that these national assets are national assets. You own them. But of course, you can't use them or touch them or visit them or benefit directly from them at all. It's just a
yeah,
giant fraud.
yeah, exactly. They talk about power to the people and the people, but it's all nonsense. It's all a lie. So this is one of the mistakes that I think Millet is making. I'll sound libertarian, but all of the state assets in Argentina, they should not be sold because the wrong guys are going to buy it at discretionary prices. This is the type of thing that just happens when you're dealing with bureaucracies. They should be distributed to the Argentine people, the oil company, the national airline, and so forth. Because once you give the people shares, it's tough to take those shares away from the people, especially after you start paying dividends.
And you'd think that if and he's a good communicator, so I think if he could load that idea, it would. He has support still apparently from the majority of the people there, although it's getting harder and harder as the economic situation deteriorates from an inflation standpoint. But I don't know why people wouldn't rally around that. It'd be very hard for them to make those common socialist arguments against an idea like that. Who wouldn't support it?
I think it's a giant trick that Millet is missing to take all of the parastatal entities in Argentina and distribute them all to the people, basically pro rata. And it's easy to do in a country like Argentina. Everybody has a national idea. They call it a DNI. So it's easy to know who the Argentine citizens are. They get their pro rata share, and you explain to them, if this company does well, and you'll have shares in many companies, which will be lettered, so you can't sell them immediately. This was one of the problems with Eastern Europe and Russia. It's that they gave them these things. They didn't know what they were valued at. They were bought for pennies on the dollar by the oligarchs. So it's all on computer, and they're lettered, so they can't be sold for X number of years, percentage-wise per year. Some of them will start paying dividends, can't be nationalized. No, that's a major trick that Melee is missing. And
Try and if you maybe talk to some of the people who know him and see if you can get the idea in front of him.
yeah, and I went out to dinner the other night with a couple of Italian guys, one of whom's a lifelong friend of Malay's. They're always in touch personally. And I didn't emphasize this enough to him because he could talk to Malay and explain this to him. But it's a trick he's missing. It would solve a lot of his problems. He could make an immediate bequest to the Argentine people for solve his current problems and future problems. So
Right, and he could still sell a portion of it to generate the foreign reserves he needs to generate the capital, but the vast majority of it get distributed to the people.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's precisely right. And once that's clear, people might be willing in international markets to buy shares, generating capital for Argentina in major enterprises. That well, the oil company and the airline are two obvious ones, but there are a lot of others that are big.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll have
Great to
to
get that idea in front of him.
I'll have to call Alessandro up and reemphasize this to him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause dude, test case with just the airline or the oil company is obviously the diamond in there.
yeah, the airline in particular would be good because that's one thing that the Kirchnerites have used as a piggy bank for La Campora, their youth group. The reason every other airline in the world has been coining money, but Aerolíneas Argentinas has been losing billions per year because it all goes to the criminals.
Hmm, amazing. Okay, 2 more questions, Doug. Have you ever been to Angola?
No, and I really feel bad about that. I should have gone there during the diamond boom, uh, but it's always been a wild and woolly place. It's like the Congo except the Congo speaking Portuguese. But there was a book I read back in the 70s talking about exotic locales in the world, and the author put his finger on Luanda, the capital of Angola, which at that time we're talking about something with a California climate like Los Angeles.
Hmm.
It's same latitude south on the Atlantic as LA is on the Pacific.
Hmm.
Wonderful climate, fantastic climate. And at the time, it was a small city, only a couple 100,000 people and well organized and everything you might want. And God, you just can't kiss all the girls. But now Angola is a complete shithole. So forget about it. But it's a huge country. It's gigantic.
Hmm.
Didn't kiss that girl. Sorry. Wish I had.
Okay. Last question for you. What is, in your opinion, the most insane lie that regular people believe? They assume it's truth, and so I think he uses lie. So I think that's a versus assumption because you get into like people's faith or whatever, but no, like an effort to deceive. What's the major lie that people believe that they assume is true that is not?
Well, I'm not sure if this answers the question properly, but I think the biggest lies are the church and the state themselves.
Hmm.
I remember when I was a little kid and the nuns used to scare, it was what bad personalities scare the hell out of little kids, telling us that we were going to burn in hell for eternity if we committed a mortal sin. I'm serious. This was, listen, as late as high school. when I went to a high school run by Benedictine monks, and there was this one priest who was, in other words, who was actually one of the more interesting personalities we had on campus. But he would say things like, huh, he laughed. He had a sense of humor. He says, if you masturbate, your mother's going to burn in hell for eternity. He, he laughed because that was funny, but he meant it. He meant it. And
Mm.
so the church and the state, fear is what the church is all about, and force is what the state's all about. And the fact is that they've planted mind viruses. Both of them have the fact that they're necessary, not against the spiritual values or having a religion. This is fine. Listen, whatever gets you through the night, like Frank Sinatra used to say, is fine, no problems. But the church and the state as institutions, they're based on lies. They say, we're necessary. You need us. You must do as we say. Those are the big lies. The big lies are the ones that kill you.
Mm. Makes sense. Okay.
I mean, what do you think? Any lies that you find are particular bugaboos other than those?
Just I had the state is what I was thinking of because we were talking about it earlier. The fraud of the state. The state is that people own stuff and they think they have a stake in it when really they're just the plantation owner.
Yeah.
And you want to have good morale among the slaves, so you give them three hots and a cot, as you say.
Yeah. What was that movie that was produced by, who was it recently? Jones Plantation, where the slaves were made to think they weren't slaves because now you own the plantation, but it was so different at all. In fact, it was worse.
That's the situation we're in.
Yeah.
I think you can make an argument in the past. The slave master or whatever who had to plantation owner was responsible for making sure that you were fed and you were clothed and you had housing and all of these things. And now those are your responsibility. And the state
Yeah.
still extracts all the value from your efforts.
And I promise you, if the wrong person listens to our conversation, they're going to come up with saying that we approve of slavery. This is the kind of world we live in.
Yes, but there's this comedian I like. He had a bit a couple months ago. As Owen Benjamin is his name, and he said that hearing black women talk about abortion and that they needed to have that because it's just too expensive to have kids and family planning, blah blah blah. And he said, "Well, instead of you killing the baby, could I buy it?" And people's reaction to it was shocking because, of course, they go like, "No, it's better if we kill the baby." And he's like, "No, I'd be nice to I'd sleep in the same house that we sleep in it, eat the same food." He has a homestead. So it'd be like, "But it's labor for life I get the advantage of, but is that worse? Is that immoral worse than killing the baby?" And just framing the question that way was great because it caused people to think about it all fundamentally differently.
Yeah, you're right. It blows people's minds when you bring up a basic philosophical question that obviously never thought about.
Yeah, he's good. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for now, Doug. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Matt. Same to you.